Morning, councillors, gallery and viewers to the Environment Community Committee 14th of August 24. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Hugh, Acting General Manager, Mike Brady, General Manager, Acting CEO today. Thank you, ladies, for your assistance today in today's meeting. I'd like to also acknowledge the Mayor, Jeff McDonald, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Rebecca, and councillors to the meeting this morning and all those in the gallery. In opening the meeting, I would like to remind councillors to make sure you've hit join the meeting so we're all present. And importantly, in opening the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands we meet on today, the Western Waka Waka, Jarawa and Guibles people and the Bigambul people to our west. I'd like to pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and I'd like to acknowledge the connection they've had for many, many years, centuries, in fact, and First Nations people all over the world. All of our forebears who understood connection and the importance of the world around us and how we interconnect with that and each other. And that's important as we go into any meeting and particularly around a leadership role in our community and how we connect and serve our community together. So, item 2, attendance and including apologies, leave of absence, declarations of conflicts of interest. Sorry, Councillor James, I omitted to acknowledge you two online with us this morning. Are you there? You might be on mute, mate. Can you hear us?
He's on mute at the moment.
Okay, James, we'll continue, mate. Just chime in and let us know you're there. He is? Okay, we'll keep proceeding with the meeting. I don't have any apologies that have been notified, and leave of absence. And no declarable conflicts of interest at this stage. Look, as per normal, if you feel as though you'd like to raise something, please inform us on the way through. Item 3 is closing of the meeting to the public. We have got a number of potential items this morning, and the meeting is closed in accordance with section 254J3 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 to consider the following items on the agenda. This report discusses matters of commercial nature involving the local government for which a public discussion would likely to prejudice the interests of local government, and therefore it is recommended that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with section J2453G, negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving the local government for which a public discussion...
Unknown participant is now exiting.
You're right. Which is likely to prejudice the interests of local government of the Local Government Regulation 2012. So there are 3 confidential items this morning, councillors. So could I have a mover and a seconder that we go into confidential? Councillor Jeff and Councillor Rebecca, those in favour? That's carried unanimously. go, Kirsten. All right. Councillors, out of confidential, we have some motions before us. They're quite lengthy motions. I don't think I'll read them. They're as part of the record, unless you would like me to read them out. Otherwise, item 4. There it is there, councillors. In accordance with the motion, do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Trevor, Councillor Gary, those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We move to item 5. It's around the acquisition of land for park purposes, Crow's Nest. There again, I won't move the motion. Councillor Carroll's happy to move. Councillor Tim seconds. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. And item 6, incoming sponsorship of Toowoomba Carnival of Flowers 2024, Morton Co. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Beck and Councillor Melissa. Those in favour? That's carried. That concludes the Environment Committee meeting for the 14th of August, councillors. We'll now go to Finance and Business Strategy Committee meeting. Thank you.
Welcome to the Finance and Business Strategy Committee meeting for Toowoomba Regional Council. The meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. I'd like to thank those of you who are in the room for us today, acknowledge everyone watching it via Council's social media channel. Reminder councillors to click join the meeting in board view. I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose song lines traverse these lands we meet on today, the Western Waka Waka, Gibla and Jawar peoples, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge and rich traditions and bold ambitions of Australia's first peoples. Right. Attendance and including apologies, leave of absence and declaration of conflicts of interest. Councillor James O'Shea attending via Teams.
Yes, present, Chair.
Apologies, nil advised. Noting leave of absence, nil. Declaration of declarable conflict of interest, nil advised. Right. Operational plan for quarter, do we need to come back to that? Dave Quinlan, oh, you're here. Okay. Andrew, okay. He's right. I'll hand over to Andrew.
Good morning, councillors. Just bear with me. This morning we're presenting the quarterly operational plan as at the 30th of June. And I'll take you through, I guess, the FNBS group and any achievements as part of that group this morning. So finance and business strategy continues to be supported by a group of staff committed to both the organisation and service to the community. So it's enabled by financial services with key results for financial services, including a local supply spend of 59% or $231 million, a rate arrears of 3.7%. For ICT, like the rest of the organisation, has had challenges in terms of staffing resources, and this has impacted a number of our projects. Looking at customer and communication and engagement, over the past financial year, they have begun the process of developing a new customer experience strategy for the organisation, which will be further refined and implemented in the coming financial year, as well as working through the customer survey results. In the customer service space, a new phone system, Genesis Cloud, was introduced towards the end of the financial year and continues to look for ways to improve the experience for our customers and staff. In customer service, all performance targets have been met or exceeded for the year. In our digital and traditional customer communication channels, as well as stakeholder management, council are continually reviewing our methods to grow our audience to reach as many residents as possible with meaningful and engaging content. Looking at people, culture and engagement, the Reconciliation Plan development is on track with the working group, board and consultant engaged to assist with the development of the plan. Looking at the workplace health and safety strategy, the 2021-24 strategy has been finalised and have had approved after extensive consultation, a refresh strategy for 24-27. PC also has a continued focus on health, wellbeing and safety through training and events and programs for our employees. And I'd also like to flag for the month of August, this month is Vehicle Incident Free Month, and I'll hand over to questions for the FNBS group.
If we have no questions, I'll put the motion forward. Is that correct? No.
Well, just Chair, through you to Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. And David, welcome to you as well. And David will help us guide through from an intro and go through it. Thanks, Andrew, for jumping in there for the FNBS. It seems that despite the challenges of what's well documented in regard to staffing levels and retention and attraction, that we are hitting the targets that have been set. From your perspective, from an FNBS regime, through the advertisement now of vacant positions, are we seeing more people applying for positions than perhaps what we would have had 12 months ago, just anecdotally, and you can take it on notice if need be?
Kylie Delrain's is in the room, so I'll probably hand over to Kylie, Acting PC Manager.
Thanks, Andrew. Welcome, Kylie. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. Thanks for the question. We have seen, and I keep hearing anecdotally, that there is increased interest and increasing numbers of applications for council positions. We've seen recently the uptick, particularly around the Crestbrook Dam Safety Improvement Project advertising campaign, significant interest from the marketing campaign through to all of those roles that we advertise having applications. So we're just working through that recruitment process. So there has been good interest.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that. I appreciate it. That's the only question I had for finance and business, Chair.
Tim?
Thanks, Chair. Just a question for finance and business and PCE while Kylie's there. Good morning, team. How are you? The new exit interview process and the new recruitment strategy. So do you want me to tell you the KPIs, or you know where they are? Does that work for you, or are you just happy me to talk?
Sorry, I missed the last part.
Did you want me to point out the exact space in the report, or
I think I'm aware of the new exit process and where we are with the retention attraction strategy.
It's 85% done, but it will still be optional. Is that how it's going to work?
Sorry, I'm probably not understanding. What's optional? The exit?
An exit interview.
Exit interview is optional at this stage. We have spent considerable amount of time last year when I first started presenting to council, looking at that exit process, ensuring that our communication to staff was effective, because I think from council's feedback there may have been some gaps previous to that. So we spent a lot of time refining the communication process. It is optional. We have an outsourced provider who can undertake that exit interview if an employee would like to, or they can undertake a survey.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that the new way of doing it is 85% done. So looking forward to seeing that rolled off fairly soon. On the other end, the recruitment strategy. So lovely to hear about different ways of attracting and working with the market at only 20% done though. So could you just talk me through timelines for that and how long until that's kind of up and go? Noting that it does say we're putting small improvements and efficiencies are being implemented in the interim, but the finished product, timelines on that?
It's a good question, Councillor Tim. There's no doubt from our report that it's the recruitment area that we have been able to progress as much as we would have liked to over the last financial year. And that goes alongside the fact that it's quite a busy environment. So we haven't been able to complete that piece of work. It's certainly flagged for this financial year. And we would hope to see a revision of that strategy. We don't actually have a strategy at the moment. It's a policy and procedure, but we are hoping to revise that. In saying that, we have done some of those small tweaks. The Crestbrook Dam Safety Improvement Project is probably one example of where we took a different approach to try and achieve different results. And we've got a few examples of those things happening.
Continued updates on that. Thanks very much.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Chair. Just to follow on from the Mayor's comments regarding the Crestbrook, we're getting great interest in when we advertise. How's that filtering down to like people on the ground, as in parks, gardens, apprenticeships? Is it flowing right through the whole network with we're getting more people applying for jobs with us?
If I understand the question, I think I've heard anecdotally in different parts of the business that we are attracting more applications. I can't say with any certainty that it is every single area of council, We are certainly seeing some ex-employees returning to council as well, which is a good sign that people enjoy working for council.
It was a bit of an on-the-spot question, but thanks for your answer.
Any more questions, anyone?
I'll probably hand over to Dave Quinlan to introduce operational plan proper.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I was watching the live streaming, and it was a little bit quick in the changeover from ECS to F&BS committee because of the confidential session. So I did have to run as quickly as I could, but I didn't get here quite as early. So thank you to my colleague Andrew for reporting on F&BS. But I'll draw Council's attention to the agenda item, it being the report, the operational plan progress report for Q4 of 2023-24. It's the last operational plan report for that fiscal year. It's the last operational plan report, indeed, for the 2019-24 corporate plan. And it's also the last operational plan report under this format. As you know, we've moved to a new corporate plan from 1st of July with a different style of operational plan and reporting now. It's a statutory requirement that we have a 5-year corporate plan, an annual operational plan, and we report at least quarterly. The report at the front contains several pages that provide a summary, and then there's very extensive attachments against each of the 5 groups and also the Office of the CEO. Can be seen in the pie charts at the start of the report, page 3, and then again on page 5, that we're at, for the year, 97% of actions being on track, 81% of the on track or monitor, sorry, and 81% of KPIs on track or monitor. Bearing in mind, of course, that these are stretch targets. On page 7, there is a line drawing comparing how progress by actions compare with preceding fiscal years. I would draw Council's attention to the fact that the y-axis in that chart does indeed, we've suppressed the 0. It's showing between 90 and 100% and therefore accentuates the volatility. But looking at that in reality, overall we've remained, I think, relatively consistent by financial year. This stage, typically, Mr. Chair, we provide the opportunity for councillors to ask questions in relation to each individual group's performance or Office of the CEO. It's typically done in order of the report so we can better organise for people to be available to answer those questions, typically the General Manager of the group.
Any questions? Queries, attachment 1. Any queries, attachment 2? I'll ask you to give a quick overview. Thank you.
Good morning again, Council, and thanks for the opportunity to present in relation to the ECS operational plan progress update. I'd like to start with some opening remarks, if that's okay, in relation to some of the most notable parts of our delivery for the financial year. And it's something that Nick, as GM of ECS, has certainly been working on. And at the start of this year, he set us 3 broad priorities, and those were understanding and quantifying our service levels to the community, also to refine and improve our customer service practices, and also to refine and improve our asset management and asset maturity practices. And in line with that, there have been some notable highlights for the financial year. Around service levels, Council would be aware that within the ECS group there was a significant review of our aquatic facilities and a realignment of the way we delivered those services, and considerable work was done by the CDFT team and the property services team, and the delivery of those services has been realigned and resulted in significant savings to the organisation in the order of about $1.5 million, which was a significant impact on the operating margin, and has, you know, from what we can see in front of us, continued to deliver a consistent service in the aquatic space, which has been great. We have, sorry Garrett, we have been also been doing considerable work in the asset management space, and I note for Council the report you have in front of you shows significant improvements in both property services and parks and recreation in terms of the delivery of the majority of the asset improvement, the asset management improvement plan deliverables, which will put us in good stead for the future in terms of managing those assets and making sure those assets continue to deliver the services that the community require. The final thing I would like to highlight, which I think is quite relevant, is it can be seen in the report that the delivery of services across our group has been quite positive. You can see in front of you a considerable increase in attendance at library and galleries within the LCS branch. We can also see within the CDFT area some strong attendances, higher than forecast, in all of Council's operated venues such as Highfields Cultural Centre, Oakey Cultural Centre, the Annex and the community rooms, which has been quite significant. And we also note the record attendances at the previous year's Toowoomba Carnival of Flowers, and considerable work we're doing at the moment to prepare for the 75th Carnival of Flowers, which is nearly upon us. So those are broadly the highlights at an operational level. Nick, as our GM, has continually spoken to the group and branches in the group about a vision for an engaged workforce who trusts the organisation, enjoys coming to work and goes home feeling valued, and that is something that has driven these positive results, and also has allowed us, I think, to look at those services we give to the community and make sure that they are current and are meeting the community's needs. So with that, I could, if through you, Chair, if I could open to any questions in relation to the report.
Any questions? Tim?
Chair, thanks. I was also going to sing the praises of some of the events, but you beat me to it. But just to say the 14% increase in Carnival of Flowers is noted, and very well done to all the team. Things like double the forecast viewers at Crow's Nest Gallery, as one example to many, is also very well noted. And across the board, art galleries, libraries, all up. So that's great to see. I had a question, and I'm trying to find it again. In Millmerran, we have this, you know, our council chambers, and there's also like a booth where the community can come and access, I think it's sort of state government services at our council booth, and numbers for that are right up. So I don't even know where it is in the report because I've scrolled so far. But are those numbers, and I note there was some commentary about there's been a few local issues happening where probably the residents may need to use those services, but do you know, and you might have taken on notice, if those numbers are likely to remain as high, and if that service is in its current form achieving what it needs to in the community.
Thank you, Councillor Tim. I may have to take some of that on notice, but I think it's worth noting that the Millmerran Community Support Centre is somewhat different to the other community development activities that happen across our region, in that there is state government funding that is supplied that broadens our service offering in that space. And that, you know, as all councillors would be aware, you know, current cost of living issues, current social issues have meant that across the board, reliance on services loosely associated with what you would normally expect from a neighbourhood centre, certainly highly in demand. Our community officers in that space do a great job. We're currently reviewing whether the facilities we provide, as you mentioned, we operate out of a former bank building in the main street of Millmerran, whether that continues to meet the purposes of that support service, and we're working through that at the moment. But certainly the higher demand in that space is something that we're monitoring, yes.
Thanks very much for your answer. I did find it, page 29, if anyone wanted to look. It says we have a target of 2,700 people coming to support, use that, access that support, and we've received 5,372. So the other question of that is, if the state government is funding us to get 2,700 people through the door and we're getting 5,300, perhaps we need to revisit the amount of assistance they're giving us to run their services, federal and state government. Thanks very much.
Any more questions? Yes, Rebecca.
Thanks, Chair, through you. Thanks very much for this, gentlemen. No surprise, if I can take us to page 46 of the report, which is 30 on resolve, 30 of 44 on resolved. It's the prescribed burns and it's sheeting with rain outside. But there's two things I want to ask about: the KPI percentage prescribed burns completed in accordance with the program. So we aim for 100%, so all of the prescribed burns in the program get done. There's a 50% actual, so half of what we had hoped to get done, we actually did get done. And the comment talks about planning's underway for the 24-25 burn program, and that the prescribed burns not able to be undertaken last year will be assessed for inclusion next year. So that commentary makes sense, but I think it's separate to the actual KPI, which is we didn't get done what we hoped we'd get done, and there's always things to be taken into consideration with this KPI. We're aware of the major role that weather plays. And so I guess the question is, in the times when we do have wet weather that precludes burns, I mean, the difficulty is it then sets up a lot of grass growing that come summer is fuel for fires. So can you reassure us, Hugh, that it is an area of focus of council and that those windows for burns are being vigorously looked at by the officers?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Rebecca. And you are correct, there's no surprise. In fact, I have some notes here to provide, and we can provide this to all council. I spoke with the officers regarding this to be best prepared for this session, and they've provided me with a few notes which I think are quite relevant. Their advice generally at the moment is that fuel has actually slowed through the later part of the winter, so the heavy frosts which we've experienced have actually inhibited some of that growth, which somewhat negates the higher risk aspects of the issue. And some of these burns, my understanding is Some have been assessed as not being able to be delivered, as you know, through weather conditions, but some have also been assessed as not required because of those issues. So I can provide this to you, Council, as an email if through your chair, to provide a full update, but I can certainly assure Council that prescribed burns and bushfire mitigation is something we're taking very seriously and we put considerable resources to.
Any other questions? Mike, infrastructure progress update. Mike.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to give an update of the Infrastructure Services Group operational plan outcomes for 23-24. Probably obviously a few of our achievements and main focus of the last 12 months has been very much the RFA 2022 flood recovery program, a nearly $300 million program, of which we've got to, by the end of June, about a 75% completed point, which was an excellent effort by all our teams involved, all the council teams across the region, as well as our two major contractors, Golding and Giorgio. So good effort there. Close to 100% delivery of all capital works by construction maintenance and the teams right again through our council. So very good in delivery of the program. And fleet, though not in the order of about 90% delivery there, and delays there are mainly due to supply chain issues of major plant. A lot of support obviously goes in to our advisory groups in the last 12 months as well. Our regional active and public transport advisory group, our Toowoomba Aerodrome advisory, and our ag and logistics transport working groups. A lot of effort goes into supporting them and working towards the longer term outcomes. Obviously challenges, it was mentioned earlier with PCE, resourcing and recruitment across council, definitely a major challenge in the technical space, be it engineers, trades and construction space. Getting good staff is still a challenge, and we aren't seeing any great uplift. We've seen a small improvement in a couple of areas, but definitely not in the professional or technical spaces at this stage. We're still getting only, in some cases, 0 applications or 1 or 2 applications on some of the positions that we've gone out for. So it's still quite challenging in that space. The cost of materials and services across council, but particularly in the construction space, has probably gone up over 10% again this last financial year, well ahead of any revenue increases. So that's a challenge right across the business, but an ongoing challenge for council. Our customer expectations and our community expectations are quite high, and that's come through in the community survey when you look at the request around roads and the like, those sorts of things, and that comes through too from an asset sustainability perspective. We've got still need for a very high focus in that space to try to keep our assets, our roads open. Another challenge for this year is the 2024 flood event that came through in January, and obviously we're in the process of putting submissions in for that one now. From the projects, a few highlights there, which were good outcomes for the year just gone by. And the completion of Nuku Road. It's the last completed link of unsealed road between Crow's Nest and Blackbutt. That was completed just before December. And that was a great outcome, I think, for our communities. It's been a strategic outcome that we've been working to for the last decade. The West Creek Cycleway, the Cycle Street and Pierce Street, that was, a good initiative and one that a first for Queensland. Cools Road reconstruction, right through there in front of Peacehaven, everything that's tidied up. Obviously rehabilitated the pavement, but really tidied up that area through there that's making that. And then, even through a lot of our rehabilitation jobs we've done through the region, like Newman Road Culvert and rehab project. There was a fairly large one there. But there's a number of black spot projects, heavy vehicle safety productivity, bridges renewal and TIDS projects as well through the year. So that's just a quick overview of the year just gone. Thank you. Happy to take any questions on the report.
No? Oh.
Thanks, Chair. Through you to Mike. Mike, is there any work scheduled in Forward Works programs for the rest of Cools Road down to Highfields Road? And does that...
No, not at this stage. That surfacing work was done there probably about 7 or 8 years ago on that that other section. So at this stage, that section's going to be left as is.
Okay, thanks.
I'll ask Nicola to on the progress report on the planning and development services.
Good morning, councillors, and apologies. I've had a cold, so my voice is a little bit deep and meaningful, hopefully. Sorry, a little bit nasal. I'm very pleased to provide an update of planning and development progress report for the last financial year, I should say. So we're the smallest team in council and most of the staff work under very tight statutory timeframes where the outcomes could be quite detrimental to the community, including the risks of things like deemed approvals of poor development or deemed refusals of good development and subsequent legal action. The team have worked very hard to create a safe and happy workplace culture, and we're seeing that success in the form of attracting great applications for roles. And we took our team through a restructure in the second quarter of last financial year, and we're very pleased to see very positive outcomes reflected in exceptional staff survey results in the third quarter of this financial year. With many graduate and other entry positions for professional planners and engineers, we're often faced with having too many great applications for the number of roles. And for our senior roles too, we've had great success and we will soon welcome a new manager of economic development. However, with the staff changes, that has impacted on the KPIs. As within planning and engineer, we've welcomed many new staff, including junior staff, and the time is being taken to train them appropriately. At present, the planning and engineering teams are probably staffed with as many, if not more staff than they've ever had. We've been really successful at attracting staff back from other local governments and from private, and probably a word of warning to other local governments, if you've got staff, we're going to be out there poaching them. So good luck trying to keep them. To further assist, we have had 2 vacant positions within our branch that we moved into the DIG branch, which is Development, Infrastructure and Growth. And this was to assist with work identified by industry and consultation as needing more support. And namely, these are things like infrastructure agreements. So our tendency now is to enter into those early. They are quite administratively burdensome because it requires negotiation, and obviously it's a legal contract that council enters into. Things like PANS, plan seal and infrastructure charges. And these outcomes were the result directly of community survey results and then also consultation on the new economic development strategy. We've also filled in recent months some really critical roles like the role of landscape architect and principal architect, and we continue to improve our processes to be more efficient and effective. In that regard, we've really jumped into being innovative and agile, and we've introduced a number of new measures, not only to reduce the burden on staff, but also the flow-on effects will be better and more efficient customer service. And these include things like PC Online, our fast track for some plumbing applications, removing some of the burden of responding to information requests and conditions in our development applications. We've changed our fees so that it's a much simpler structure. We've taken over backflow from a different area of council. And for Total Range, which is our building certification, they continue to enter into memorandums of understanding with other councils who are not well placed to do those certifications. And that work is happening across Queensland, including in very, very far north Queensland by that team. So well done. Into the future, the innovations in this next few months will include that increased focus on entering into infrastructure agreements early so there's certainty for developers and also council with respect of costs of infrastructure. Early plan seal. We will look at something like what we call TR+, which is a pre-certified engineering external engineers to assist with some of that engineering backlog, because it's certainly been identified that engineers will be in short supply, particularly over the next 10 decades. So we need to come up with processes to come around that. In terms of our most major project, which is the planning scheme and the new local government infrastructure plan, final confirmation of the Shaping SEQ growth projections were provided in April of 2024, so this year. The data were then entered into our modelling software for projections to be forecast for use by our various infrastructure networks across council. So this modelling took a number of weeks to complete and it was then provided to the networks. However, it has resulted, including with Shaping SEQ growth projections, in probably a delay of around a year. Consultants had already been engaged across the networks to help with the LGIP, and then we have changed contracts, made variations, etc., to take that into account. However, the work is going very well. The mapping has just been completed. Regarding a lot of our extrinsic materials, including the urban form guidelines, European heritage and Indigenous heritage, these important materials have been summarised. So there's a very extensive summary of 300 pages. It will be discussed at our next Toowoomba Region's Futures briefing. And it's really necessary for us to rely on these materials to demonstrate to the state that important line of sight between our new planning scheme and the extrinsic materials. And I'm happy to hand over to you now and take any questions that you might have.
Yes.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, GM Nicola, for that comprehensive report. So congratulations on the recruitment. Can you highlight or can you give us an indication of what you've done to display such impressive results with recruitment, please?
Thank you. That's a very good question. We went through what I say is a staff-led restructure. So we wanted to create a workplace where the staff felt valued, safe and happy. So I engaged some external agents and we sought extensive consultation with our staff, including one-on-ones, and they were provided with the opportunity to bring a support person because there were a lot of issues that had not been aired and we wanted to deal with them sensitively and thoroughly. From that, any staff that were affected by the restructure had the opportunity to actually say where they wanted to go, and every person got their first preference, which was perfect. So when we did the restructure, every staff member went exactly where they wanted to go. So there were no forced redundancies. No one was forced to do work that they didn't want to do. And I think in part that added to their sense of feeling heard. We did have, there was a lot of interest by the unions, and that has included in the enterprise bargaining agreements, because often restructures are problematic if they're not done well. So it was really important for us to see that the staff's view was that we were providing a safe and happy workplace, which we saw in that staff the staff survey, I should say. Sorry, it's my cold going to my brain. Look, so I think from my perspective, it's just engaging with staff, listening, hearing, being mindful that you have to create opportunities for change. And then what I heard most commonly from staff initially was that they didn't know me and didn't trust me to actually take their concerns into account. So part of the process has been me earning the trust of staff that I do act and will do something if there's an issue.
Who was someone? Bill or Tim? Bill.
Thanks, Chair. Through you to Nicola. Just on 14 of 25 of the report regarding... Oh, I just had it. Yeah, the Green Infrastructure Strategy Action Plan, and I note the vacancies, it's been held over because of those vacancies. When's that likely to, I was just trying to flick back up, that's why I lost my place, onto the pie graphs to see if that area has been staffed. I think you said you've reached your staff quota now. I'm just wondering when that will actually progress further.
Yes, so we've engaged a landscape architect. I think she's been on board for probably 3 months, I'm going to say, and a landscape architect. But also we will take into account, prioritising canopy and those types of things. So the work that we will be doing into the planning scheme. So I would say this will progress quite quickly now, and I can provide you with a further update because I've got no doubt they'll be working on it.
So I guess another question for me, and that springs to mind in preparation for planning scheme, where in fact the strategy sits, and what that looks like for an organisational view around green infrastructure, and where we might go as far as overarching policy to help drive that infrastructure strategy, green infrastructure strategy. Is that part of a body of work that will come back to Council for consideration?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Yes, it will. Part of what we're doing at the moment is working with developers, and an example might be quite recently a developer was conditioned to provide trees along the verge, and they had to be 15 metres apart. Because of the shape of the street, the frontage of land was quite narrow. So for some of the blocks, you couldn't have 2 lots of trees and a car park. So what we did, we had a meeting with Parks and the developer, and the trees were actually the ones that were where a developer's street frontage had 2 trees. We actually moved the trees were moved into a park nearby. So we got a really good outcome for the community, but it was just a matter of sitting down together. So I think in terms of canopy cover, vegetation, etc., in the next planning scheme, it's being able to have the flexibility to demonstrate that it is important to us, and how that might work in the process of approving developments, just to make sure that as a priority takes precedence.
Yeah, I'm keenly interested to see how there might be some uniformity across the organisation on how we handle that as well and what priority we place on that. I note here in one of the points, the working group has not yet been formed, review of the GIS action plan. So now that staffing complement's there, to progress that, is that working group, is that consisting of both external and internal people to progress some of those matters?
Thank you, Councillor, and yes, it would be. So this is at the end of June. I can follow up with Jade to see what progress has been made. However, we're still to form some of the advisory committees and those types of things. So I would say that would fall into that area. So to my knowledge, since the last council was elected, we haven't gone through the steps of forming the full committees and working groups, etc. But I could be wrong. There could be one already in the background, but I'll find out for you.
Thanks.
Tim?
Thank you, Chair. I also had the question on the green infrastructure strategy. Good to see that will look to move fairly well now. But the next one, the urban form guidelines. It's not a body of work I'm actually overly familiar with, to be honest, but my reading is most of it's done, but it's not in the planning scheme probably because that's being replaced. So can you just tell me what that body of work is and what the plan is? Is it just to put it into the new planning scheme?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And this will actually come to Council, I think it's next Wednesday is our next Toowoomba Region's Futures update. So as part of developing a new planning scheme, Council is required to rely on extrinsic materials. So where there's an area of need or a gap identified, whether it's in heritage citations, those types of things, or the urban form guidelines, and also past work. So some of the fantastic past work that has been done by that team in place, such as, I think they're warm temperate guidelines, those types of things. All of those extrinsic materials inform the planning scheme. So we've got, it's certainly in excess of more than a dozen studies that were conducted, including the urban form guidelines. A summary of those, of each of the studies and the recommendations has been done. We'll actually be bringing that to you next week. And the summary on it in and of itself is 300 pages, so it's quite lengthy, but it does include the urban form guidelines, and that's things about the placemaking, the amenity, the nature characteristics, and those types of things. So that will obviously be very important in terms of informing the planning scheme. So when we put the planning scheme to state for the review, the state will look at all of those extrinsic materials. If we don't accept a recommendation of those extrinsic materials, any of the we have to be able to justify that. So it's really important that, which is why we'll be taking you through the extrinsic materials, because in general, for most of them, we'll be adopting the recommendations, and that would include whether it's urban form guidelines or heritage citations, First Nations citations, those types of things.
Sure. Well, I look forward to next week because that's something I'd really like to get my head around and look forward to seeing the new planning scheme. So well done. Just a follow-up, one more, Chair, if I might. It is an honest question. On page 128, code accessible applications within statutory timeframes. It's quite topical at the moment, and 38 to 90%. 38 is where we're at, 90 is where we want to be. And I know there is some commentary around reasons why that may not have happened within the timeframes, but I suppose I wanted to ask in honestly, and it is an honest question, is it ongoing vacancies or are there external factors like this room as well?
Thank you. There's a range of factors, including the complexity of the applications. So ordinarily, whether it's complexity, it could be something that, for example, a developer might take time to, they might be required to provide more information and they might seek an extension. It could be that it's called in. It could be that it could be a range of things. It could be staffing, but we've generally addressed that issue now, so moving forward. What I can say though is generally the developers or the applicant will work with us and grant extensions. So it's uncommon for them not to grant an extension because generally they recognise that we're all putting as much effort as we possibly can into the applications. We work with them early and inform them if we think there is going to be a delay. And in some cases, it's part of that training because on some of these applications, there were more junior and newer planners who then had to be assisted through the process, including what we have is a very complicated internal referral pathway, which I had reviewed and we're about to start talks again across the networks just to bed down a final agreement. So there's a range of things, including the administrative burden and other things outside of council's scope that do impact on the time delays. I don't know that we've had one that has gone to deemed in general, we deal with them before they go to deemed approval. So that's the risk for us, is it goes to deemed approval and all we can do is impose conditions. But problematically, you might end up with something that is not a good development for the region.
Rebecca.
Thanks, Chair, through you. Thanks, Nicola, for this. And I want to pick up on what you was talking about with the canopy cover and the planning scheme. And that's excellent that that work is progressing and will be taken into account, and we will decide how we do that as a council. But I think it is especially important given the phytophthora outbreak that unfortunately we are dealing with at Toowoomba region. So that tree canopy cover and the planning scheme, I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. And I think it's actually, I mean, it's a chance for the councillors to, as representatives of the community, to have your say about what the community is going to look like. And for us, we've worked with developers, and it often comes up in terms of, you know, should we be placing more trees along those active corridors so that we can encourage more cycling and walking, and if so, what kind of trees, and are they going to get in the way of our water pipes? I know Jake will look at me. So I just think it's a really great conversation to have, because we're known for being a garden city and we're known for our, you know, our tree-lined streets. So it's a fantastic opportunity to have to decide what the future of the region will look like.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, councillors. I guess, wow, what a year 2023-24 has been for the water and waste area. When I look back at some of the achievements that we've made over the last 12 months, probably the major jewel in the crown has been the completion of the Mount Conock water treatment plant. What a fantastic project to future-proof, at least in the medium term, water supply for the residents connected to Toowoomba's bulk supply scheme. We've managed to replace the largest lengths of reticulation main since amalgamation, with over 6 kilometres of mains been replaced, so major contribution to our asset management practices. We've remediated and capped the Greenmount landfill and converted this to a transfer station. So great outcome for the community of Greenmount. And the technology we've used there has been groundbreaking as far as using a phyto cap to grow a green top to a landfill. So fantastic outcome there. Excluding the dam safety upgrade project, councillors, we've managed to complete 91% of the capital works that we had planned for the year. So fantastic outcome to ensure that not just, obviously Crestbrook Dam has its own challenges, and I'll move on to those, but other than that, our team's been working incredibly productively to ensure that we're meeting our and spending our budget and ensuring that the services are delivered to the community. We've managed to execute the alliance contract for Crestbrook Dam as a 20-odd years in the making to get to that point, so it's a fantastic effort from those involved. There's been quite a number of challenges with the progress of this project, but that only further demonstrates the complexity of the works and the diligence that's required when working on critical and strategically important infrastructure such as Crestbrook Dam. We're able to commence, complete and submit a full business case for the Crestbrook Dam Safety Improvement Project at the request of the state government that demonstrated the disproportionate costs that are faced by our community as a result of this project. We currently sit eagerly awaiting, hopefully, a favourable response in relation to that business case. We've worked to identify when we have major challenges in our network, and as councillors are aware and the community is aware, we have had some changes in our network, major challenges, in our network, in particular to those communities of Highfields and Yarraman. What we've tried to do is rectify those issues as quickly as we possibly can, also in an efficient manner, and ensure that disruptions to our essential services are kept to an absolute minimum, and of note, ensure that these instances do not reoccur. We've ensured that there will continue to be resilient water and waste services both now and into the future. We're planning to action initiatives to ensure there's not just enough water, but our sewage systems and our waste facilities continue to support a vibrant and growing community. We're attempting to return and have started to return to core business, making sure that we're getting those important things correct and ensuring that our team is supported to achieve this. We also have the right resources in the right places and our priorities are aligned across the business. As Council is aware, and we've heard already, there's been a number of challenges. Our management team has and is going through some significant changes. So fairly new to the position as General Manager, and we still have quite a number of vacancies in our management team. But I've made a commitment to our staff to listen to new ideas, work together to solve problems and address concerns. Our teams need to be bold and prepared to give things a go, but to also reflect and make changes when we're not heading in the right direction. Finally, our staff are our biggest asset. And with the level of disruption that's been experienced over the past 12 months, I'd like to make special mention to the whole team, every single person within the water and waste team, for your community-first mindset, demonstrated through extensive discretionary efforts that have been made across all areas of our business to ensure that the community can see water when they turn on the tap, their sewage disappears when they flush the toilet, their bins are regularly emptied, and that there's a place to dispose of their rubbish safely and responsibly. Happy to answer any questions, councillors.
Do I have any questions? I now ask for a move and second the motion that Council note the organisation performance as outlined in the 23-24 operational plan, Q4 progress report, July-June, to be moved. Jeff and Kerry second. Thank you. I now move an adjournment for morning tea. What's that?
Yeah, we're going to ask them to move.
Oh, move it. Oh, right, okay. Melissa and those in favour, thank you on this. Come back at...
Yeah, I just moved to adjourn for 10 minutes, so if someone will second that, there we are. And then those in favour.
Those in favour.
That's it, mate.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Let's go.
We'll start the meeting if everyone's here. Thank you. I'll ask the controlled entities. I'll ask Anna Corfrey and Andrew to talk to.
Good morning, councillors. Apologies for my crackly voice, also coming off the end of a flu. So the controlled entities report will be for the quarter ended 30 June 2024. It covers the controlled entities of Toowoomba and Surat Basin Enterprise, Empire Theatres Pty Ltd, and Empire Theatre Foundation Limited as the trustee for Empire Foundation Theatres Foundation. Is there any questions on the report? Otherwise, I'll take it as the report is read.
Rebecca?
Thanks very much, through you, Chair. No questions on the report, but if I go to the attachments, the Toowoomba and Surat Basin Enterprise attachment, you know, we get these quarterly, and I note under the financials for the year to date, there's recurrent expenses, total recurrent expenses, $5,111,000 and change. Total recurrent revenue, $5,102,000 and change. And so actually I was hoping that the CEO would be here, but he's not. But the Mayor is also an ex officio on that TSBE board. So the question then through you, Chair, to the Mayor, I suppose, in the absence of the CEO, in the TSBE conversations, are they having strategic conversations about a time when they are financially sustainable?
Through you, Chair. That's okay. Thank you. Thanks for the question, Councillor Rebecca. There's a variety of areas that obviously TSB look at, and their income you can see with the grants and subsidies, donations, and it's in their information as well, that there's funds committed to particular projects, particularly through energy projects of note. So they are at their board meetings. There is very much that strategic focus on where this is heading, what it looks like, and a lot of their staffing is tied into the grants that they've been fortunate enough to receive, and therefore I think if we remove those, it would be quite different as well. So there is definitely that conversation.
Okay, thank you for that, and apologies, I had hoped to be able to direct that to the CEO, but thanks.
Bill, would you know? No, any other questions? No. Oh, okay. If not, we'll move the motion. Ask for a mover and a seconder. Rebecca, all those in favour? It's anonymous. Thank you. Community surveys, 24, Brendan. Hand over to you, Brendan. Thank you.
Morning, councillors. The community survey is a key deliverable by the organisation and is a recurring commitment to the community to gather feedback from residents regarding their satisfaction and level of importance of council services and facilities. We first did the survey in 2017 and we had a score of 6.6 out of 10. We did the survey again in 2019 where we received a 6.4. There's been a slight delay since the last time because there was a direction that we wanted to wait until the new corporate plan was in place. So we've done the latest survey this year where we had a 6.2. It's worth noting as well that we get compared to a number of other Queensland councils, and they were also a 6.2 this year, so we're in line with the state average. The survey was open from the 20th of May to the 9th of June. In previous surveys, we've only ever collated data from phone surveys, but this time we decided to do online options as well. So in total, we had 1,351 responses, which is a fair bit higher than we've ever had previously. In the attachment that you have to the agenda today, you'll see all the satisfaction scores for everything, but a few items of note that I might point out, that 7 of the 9 facilities compared had significantly higher usage rates than in 2019, with the biggest rises observed in the sport grounds, recreation reserves and museums. The direct services satisfaction scores were in line with previous surveys. 2 out of 3 of the indirect services were slightly lower than in 2024 than 2019. And out of all the services facilities, the ones which received the highest satisfaction scores were sewerage, libraries, followed by household waste collection and parks. There was an open text question in the survey as well, where residents were asked to identify what their top priorities for council should be. The highest item on that was roads, and this was followed by rates and spending. The committee recommendation today is for the report to be noted and for a summary to be uploaded on the council's website.
I open the floor to questions. Rebecca.
Thanks, Chair, through you. Thanks very much for this, Brendan. I want to sort of take a bolus look at this, and thank you for drawing attention in your preamble about the decrease in the results. I want to look, though, at what we actually do with this document and how we use it in council's decision making. And so I went to the page where we talk about definitions and the uses of it, right? So what are we actually going to use this for? And I'd like you, if you could, to talk to councillors about how you actually see this being a part of the decision-making process, you know, when it comes to prioritisation, operational plans, capital budgets and that sort of thing. It's my first question, if I might, Chair. And the second is, when I was looking at the page where, it's page 5 of Resolve, apologies, it's the one where we have the ranking 1 to 35, and there's some improvements, increases, decreases and so on. But what caught my eye in this was the yellow bars that are for the second order issues. And under the definitions, it says that a below average performing service, this is what a second order issue is, a below average performing service that does not have a strong relationship with overall satisfaction. Improvement in these services will not result in a strong increase in overall satisfaction with council. And I, again, wanted you to speak to this a little bit, because I'm concerned that second order issues such as management of invasive plants and animals, pests and noxious weeds, public toilets, taste, pressure and odour of water supply, I don't want them to fall off the boil of being council priorities, because I wouldn't say that that has been a decision that the council has made, and they are important. So first question, how do we use this? And second question, how do we make sure that things that are deemed second order issues aren't brushed aside?
Yep, thank you. I'll do my best. So out of those 35 services, I would say they're all important. If they weren't, we wouldn't be doing it. So just because it says it's a second order issue, it's a terminology that the consultants used. So they've broken it up into 4 sections where they've said, if you're trying to get the best score and give the best customer experience you can to a customer, the priority areas are the ones you should be focusing on. They're not saying you should neglect the other areas. They're just saying these are probably going to get you the best bang for the buck. So That's a conversation that we'll need to be having with CLT and all the managers across the organisation to say, how can we target these? But it certainly doesn't mean you're doing a good job in one area or the score's okay, so we can just neglect that moving forward. That's definitely not the intention. In terms of your first question, how we're going to use that data, so it's been given to all the general managers. The intention then will be to have a session with CLT at a future meeting where we actually go through these and we identify where those priority areas are and how we can best work towards making improvements so that when we do this survey in 2 years, or how we do that moving forward, that we do see improvements. In terms of how it aligns with the operational plan and the corporate plan, that deliberate move to wait until the new corporate plan was done. So we're working with the BTS branch and we're looking at what people are saying in the survey consistent with what's in that corporate plan. So council's decided that these are the priorities for the next 5 years. Does that align with what the community is saying as well? So we'll be having further conversations with them saying, are we right? Do we need to make some adjustments? And then in future operational plans, when we're setting those targets, the BTS branch will be working with the rest of the organisation.
Thanks very much. That's such a great response, Brendan. And I think for council, a thing to make sure that we don't, a trap that we make sure we avoid is that we don't use this report as a means to an end to just getting better results at the next one. It should be part of a community feedback loop where we use what the community has told us in our decision making so that we are reflecting better outcomes for the community. Thanks.
Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very interesting that this morning the Australian Road Safety Foundation has come out with all the figures on the roads and dissatisfaction of the community with the roads. The actual state of the assets from the Australian Local Government Association released in September last year shows that $23 billion worth of local roads are in poor condition, 18.7 billion have poor function and 17 billion have poor capacity. It showed the local roads network is comprised of 39% sealed, 61% unsealed. Our community is very concerned about their roads. It's not the only one. All councils over Australia, and certainly in Queensland, as local governments broaden their interests to other things, and at the end of the day, we just see we need to listen to our community as well. Our community is telling us that their concern is their roads. Why? Because what we spent on roads 10 years ago, we're still spending now, and it's buying us 40% less. And with the weather conditions and other things, I'm all for everything. Council is and should be over everything, but in the last 10 years, the focus on our local roads has not been there. And that's the money that comes from this room that keeps the roads where they should be. So I think that we should, if we're going to do these surveys, yes, everything's important, but the roads, which I think most of us, if we're looking, know that they really are of grave concern to the people, particularly in the rural and regional areas. And they are in really poor conditions, not the fault of our staff. It's the fault of weather conditions and the fact that we're not spending enough money on them. So we need to look at all of it, but we also need to look at what our community is pointing out to us. Thank you.
Any other questions? Jeff?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. Just an observation through you to Brendan. Clearly, across the other councils that have been surveyed, there has been a drop right across, and it probably hits to the core of exactly what Councillor Carroll said. And so this information is also valuable for us, I would think, for advocacy for funding and making sure that it's well known. And those other councils, I dare say, they'd be similar in those areas that they've dropped. They've dropped significantly more than what we have. 0.2 we've dropped, as I understand, and and they've dropped more than that. Did you want to just explain that, the point system and how that works and across the other benchmark councils?
Yeah, so in 2019, those other councils, they were 7.2. So they've gone from 7.2 back to 6.2. And when we had conversations with the consultant, there are a number of factors that over that time period we've had COVID, we've had closed facilities, we've had the cost of living. So there's a number of challenges facing all councils across Queensland. And I guess it just shows that we're all in that same boat. Going back to Councillor Carroll's point, I'll probably just comment that the open text question clearly did state roads are a big issue for the community. And I probably just want to highlight as well that the community survey is a point in time, and at this point in time, that's an issue for councillors. If you did this survey back in 2010, I can almost guarantee that water security would be the #1 issue. If you did it today, considering the active vandalism we had over the weekend, crime safety probably would be the top concern for residents. So it's incredibly useful to use this information, but to also accept that it's a point in time. So in terms of advocating, I agree, it's useful information that we can go back and say, look, our community's told us this. This is what they want. In terms of how strong of evidence it is, we just need to probably take a note that it's only for that point in time, and in a year or 2 years' time, that information will be different again.
Yeah, thanks. Good point. Appreciate that.
Any more? Trevor?
With the survey, what amount of people were surveyed, or the demographics of them, or across the region? Have you got any of those facts and figures?
I can get the specific details to you, but in terms of the difference between the online survey and the phone survey, the phone we had 500 and that was targeted. So they have quotas in terms of getting the age demographics and getting fair representation across the region. So when it hasn't been equalled, they have a calculator where they can sort of use and say, we've had 50 responses in the south and we've had 100 here. So we adjust the numbers slightly so that it is a fair representation of how the population spread across the organisation, across the region. In terms of the online, we don't have much control with that. So that's just whoever logs on to their computer from wherever they are, they just give us that information. But definitely the phone data, I can get you where those people have come from.
With the online, how many respondents or how many people participated in that survey? Do you have any idea? Or
851.
Yeah. So technically about 1,300 across the region. Okay, thank you.
And Kerry?
Thanks, Chair. Just two things, Brendan, thank you for the report, but just amazed at the growth of usage of recreational reserves and sports grounds between 2019 and 2024. I take it that that is a measurement of what happened in 2019 and what happened in 2024, ignoring the COVID years. Those 80% increase is, almost double the usage. Is there any particular reason that you're aware of, or why that would have been the case?
I'd only be guessing, but I know that we have experienced since the opening of facilities post-COVID, increased levels across the board. So I think that would definitely be a factor. And I know that the guys in that parks area have been doing a great job to improve facilities for the public. So I think a lot of credit needs to go to the team there as well.
I think it's probably relevant to the desire for more sports fields as well, as we know. And the other point is against what many of us may have been advised was the way to communicate with our constituents, especially leading up to elections. Social media doesn't seem to have played a big part there. It's mainly looking at the residents who receive communications from the council. Most of them relied on mail, brochures or flyers in the letterbox was the leading way residents received council information. And we're likely to contact council by phone. So there's sort of the old-fashioned, my generation type ways of communicating. Is that because the demographic is an ageing one that does have contact with council, or is it throughout the community as far as we can tell?
The ageing demographic would be a factor, but I think that probably just underlines the importance of why we have across channels. So we want to reach every age demographic and reach every person in the region. So yes, it's important to do those letterbox drops or billboards, but we need to be doing the traditional media, the social media, targeting all the different channels, that we are getting the cross population.
But certainly not to ignore mail and brochures in the future. Thank you.
Tim?
Thanks, Chair. Fairly well briefed on this. Thanks, Brendan. Just one thing I wanted to pick up, it's just sort of not sitting overly well with me. So in the very last part, in opportunities, a service that performs above average does not have a strong relationship with overall satisfaction. So if we have something that does really well, but it's kind of unseen, for example, picking up your bins does well, we don't get any phone calls unless it goes wrong. So there's the pass mark and then there's excellence, but as long as it's pass, it kind of sounds like the community doesn't care. So I hope this doesn't mean we don't strive for excellence. Do you know what I mean? Like, if a pass mark is fine, I hope we don't aim for pass. I'd still like us to aim for excellence in every service that we offer. So just in regards to that last comment, is that something that we're going to be looking at?
To a degree, that comes back to the individual branches within council, but I don't think anyone, you talk to the staff in this organisation, I don't think anyone strives just to do a pass mark. They will try and do the best they can. So the way I probably interpret that's slightly different, that people have an expectation that the bins do get picked up or sewage happens. So they don't necessarily even think about it, whereas some of those other services for opportunities, that is something that they're more conscious of, and it's not something that they just expect to happen. So whether that's be planning for an event or planning for population growth, that's a conscious thing that they're thinking of, whereas turning on a tap, emptying the bin, they just expect that to be happening.
Yeah, and, you know, if I flush the sewage and it goes away and it's out of sight, out of mind, no one even thinks that how much of council's budget and works go into making sure that happens. And when you turn on your tap, water comes out, it's just given. So I suppose with those out of sight services, you know, the community may not see the work, but unless there's a problem, they don't necessarily ring the phone. But still, just making sure we do aim for excellence in every area. Yeah, thanks.
If there's no more questions, Bill.
Thanks, Chair. Through you to Brendan. Brendan, we go to great lengths and effort to hear back. I agree with the comments about closing the loop, but is there an opportunity for us in the future, and it's around the utilisation of this data and the appropriation of it and understanding of it, is there an opportunity for us, collective as a boardroom of elected reps, management, whether that be executive management and senior managers, to actually perhaps, I guess collectively, for the want of a better word, workshop on how we might exhaust the opportunities or better utilise or understand. And sometimes from a past life, it was very valuable to hear from first-hand from a practitioner who was, and hear what their thoughts are about opportunities and weaknesses and strengths and all of those things. Is there I guess I'm floating it. I mean, great, you guys do great at what you do in collating and giving that information in the form of a report. But sometimes there's nothing like getting out and kicking a stone over, you know, metaphorically speaking, but hearing firsthand what opportunity do we have to improve in this area. And this is the feedback from the actual practitioner out there, whether it's a compliance reg officer, whether it's a Parks and Gardens, I just think there's value in an organisation understanding and interpreting that level of data even further so that we can utilise it better, or have a clear and understanding both internally as internal customers and external to the community as external customers. really there's no difference. We exist to provide service. But is there, I guess I'm throwing it out to councillors, an opportunity to, and maybe part of our, Councillor Jeff, maybe part of our strategy sessions, our days, in which we could incorporate, and it would be valuable input from yourself and other practitioners for us to get our heads around some of where we can really go with this stuff. Long-winded statement, but I know, I think we would gain a lot by exhausting those avenues.
Look, yes, I think, as you alluded to, those strategy days or other workshops are opportunities. Probably just highlight as well that this is one activity. Yes, it's an important activity, but it's one piece of that customer experience. And I know we've talked to you guys in the past about the customer experience, and there'll be more opportunities in the future to discuss that further. So there'll definitely be opportunities for that.
Rowena?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Brendan, for this report. And we have gone through it quite a bit already, but just interesting to note that the priorities for the future from residents is quite different to our priorities for council. There's some similarities, obviously roads, but for the community and residents, they're looking at rates and spending, crime and safety and general maintenance, whereas looking at our priorities for council and across all of those areas for improvement, largest decrease, we're looking at DAs and our approval process, again, the maintenance of roads and planning for population growth. So, yeah, it's just an interesting note that our priorities are listed here as slightly different.
And potentially, there's you can look at data a number of ways. So even though it's a priority for the residents, potentially they're not aware of what we're doing in those spaces either. So everyone in this room would be aware of the work that's happening with the planning scheme and population growth and the number of sessions you've had. So maybe it's a case of, do the public understand that fully? So yes, it's a priority for both of us, but it's what's the level of understanding out there in the community. So they're the conversations we need to have to make sure, are we doing enough in those spaces, or are we communicating that effectively? And the best way forward.
Right, and yeah, that was where I was going with this, is maybe we need to look at our comms process and our priorities of what we are communicating and making sure that the messages are getting across. Thank you.
James, I believe you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I assume everyone can hear me, and thank you for bearing with me today. It's been quite interesting, actually, to sit back and listen. Chair, look, the only thing I wanted to add to what's already been sort of said, I think, in regards to this important body of work is obviously the first thing I think is to recognise, obviously, that this is something that we've made a commitment to community to obviously seek their feedback and doing it on a regular basis. So, I mean, it's a commitment we make to them. And I think, as it's been mentioned a few times now, for me, I think the value in what we do with this data is not necessarily just in what we see in front of us now, but it's what we do with it and how we use it. And there's never been a better time for us to be able to use data like this and to be able to analyse it and understand different aspects of it, because as a few people have said, it is quite varied. And in some aspects, there's the obvious ones that we know around roads and things like that. But then also I thought it was interesting, the one that popped up, and like we said, it is a point in time when these are taken, but the one that was there around one of the key priorities of community was around, I think it was around safety and things like that. So that around crime and safety, which the easy answer to that obviously is well, that's not something that local government is charged with, but I think it's more that we look at, okay, well, that's something that our community is telling us is a major issue for them. What is our role in that part? And some people have said advocacy, and yeah, that certainly is certainly one, but through the whole operation and business of council, there's different ways in which is a part of local government's remit that we can potentially be assisting in that area. So I think it's important to look at different things like that, but also the timing of, we're going through that whole customer experience strategy and looking into that at the moment. So So I think it's just a really important one where we capture this data, which we have now. We've got some clear feedback from community in certain areas. We understand a couple of different areas and potentially where maybe the issue is not necessarily the issue, but it's how it's communicated. So, I mean, there could be opportunities to improve in that. But I think, as I said, that overall strategy around customer experience certainly does feed into the timing of what we have received from this. And look, you know, listening before to all of the managers, general managers, and the questions that we spoke about around the quarterly report, operational updates, you can certainly hear the optimism in the voice of the general managers and the path in which we're going forward. So it's important that we use this data for that as well, and keep moving forward with it, because at the end of the day, we are a service delivery organisation for community, and that's what we want to be able to do, and strive for excellence in every area that we can. So that's probably all I wanted to add. Thank you, Chair.
On Council's website. Moved by Jeff, second by Tim. All those in favour? Anonymous, thank you. Thank you. I now ask Barley to come up, review of the Enterprise Risk and Management Framework. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Good morning, Mayor and Deputy Mayor. I'm table item 6. Essentially, it's the Enterprise Risk Management Review that we've been undertaking for the last 6 months to 12 months, which is eventuated through internal audit reports that we needed to have a review, and also under requirements from the Local Government Act. So essentially, I'll take the reports as tabled. The background is that we have spoken to the councillors, done a consultation process along with ELT as well. So it's really just taking final questions on the risk appetite statement, which needs to be approved by councillors, and also the risk management policy. So.
Any questions? Rebecca?
If there's no questions, Chair, I was just going to say I appreciate all of the work that's gone in on the back end of getting to this point. There has been significant work, and at the appropriate time, I'm happy to move.
Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to go to page 3 of 14, Bailey, noting that the commentary is more about that's no material difference from what we've had in the past, but the way that this has been laid out is clearer, more concise and easier to follow. So I just wanted to send a bouquet to you and your team in regard to that. That page where it talks about the risk appetite summary from a 0 to open, at which point in time does something that may be external to what we have control of call for a review of an appetite, a risk appetite from this organisation, from external activity?
Okay, probably post-event, if something happens in those risk categories and we're well and truly outside of the appetite statement, that's whether it's in our control or out of our control, we would review it. Okay, so technically, if there's something that sort of we come to you and saying, look, that there's no way we can hit those tolerance levels, even if we imply all these controls, the residual outcome won't fit inside that risk appetite statement. That's generally going to be something that we won't be able to control to where it should be. And essentially, we might discover something through the process where the appetite is too high and it'll have an impact generally back to financial or other areas. So if we identify, so the next project for this is to get we've engaged ProTech to do a enterprise risk management framework online. So we're going to bring in a risk matrix to councils to say, look, is that dollar value too high? So we're going to set our risk matrix. That's the next consultation with councillors and ELT. Once that's done, we may need to revisit that if we discover something we can't maintain in our risk appetite statement. Then quarterly enterprise risk reports will be brought to council, and they'll identify something that you can't control. Okay, like purely that will say, look, we can't fit it inside. We can put all the residual controls in. You're still going to breach, or a post event or a major event. You know, for example, when COVID hit, everyone would have gone back and reviewed their risk appetite statement and gone, okay, we can put these controls in, but we're not going to hit here. And there would have been revisions, and boards would have looked at their strategies. So yeah, so essentially there'll be indicators and flags where you need to review those items.
Very good. Thanks. Thanks for that, Barley. Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second it if there's no other questions.
Okay, I call for a first and a seconder, Rebecca and Jeff seconder, and all those in favour. Anonymous, thank you. Now we'll move on to the insurance and indemnity for councils and employees policy.
Thanks, Chair. So I'll take it the report is tabled and read. For the new councillors, anything that's a policy too must come through to council. So council get an opportunity to consult as well. And so there's internally we do issue it for staff for consultation, because this one does infect employees as well. So that process has been completed. And what we've done is bring the revised policy back. We did say earlier, I think it was in the information session, that we've tried to reframe the policy to bring it up to 2024 to match the actual insurance policy that we have. There are substantial changes when you review the two, but they have been made for continuous improvement. They still provide the same benefits for the organisation. We've just matched the definitions of policy to the actual insurance benefits that we get.
Any questions? Rebecca?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for this, Bailey. And again, same comments. Thank you for the pre-work that's gone into this. Can we go to page 4 of 9 of attachment 1, which has the track changes and the proposed policy. Page 4 of 9 under section 4.2, current policy inclusions. If we drop down to the last dot point, it says unintentional libel, slander or defamation. And my question is, can you explain the inclusion of the word unintentional in there, please?
I'd have to take that on notice, because that's virtually a replication of the policy wording. And what I can do is consult the insurers and the underwriters and ask them what their view of it, because it's important to get their view, because they would apply the policy.
That'd be great, because to my mind, it adds a bar of proof that is impossible to substantiate, and of course we fall under this policy is so superseded by other state and federal policies in this space. So to my mind, I think the inclusion of the word unintentional is unnecessary and should be removed. But if we can get that advice before this comes back to us for ratification at the ordinary meeting on Tuesday, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Do I have any other questions? I'll call for a mover and a seconder that the motion be accepted. Jeff, mover, seconder. Rebecca, those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. We'll now be closing the meeting to the public. So we've got to actually move. Can I have that we, and Jeff and Kerry second. Those in favour? Unanimous. I'll now ask for a mover and a seconder for report 9 to be motion to be accepted. Edwina is mover and Melissa is a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. Report 10, I'll now call for a mover and a seconder. Carol to move, Trevor second. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Report 11, I'll now ask for a mover and a seconder. Bill move, Tim seconder. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Well, that concludes the meeting. We adjourn for lunch, I assume? No.
One more to do.
Oh, one more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So
where's that?
So we conclude this one.
Oh, yeah.
And we go
Okay.
next.
Okay.
Have you got the next page?
No.
I think we've got June this offline.
Oh, wasn't it?
Yeah, so.
Thank God.
Yeah, so you get dispensation.
Excuse me, Acting CEO, it doesn't seem that we've got the option of joining this meeting.
Just a moment. Apologies there, Councillor Gonop. You were just...
It doesn't seem like councillors have the opportunity to join the Economic Development Committee meeting, so you might just have to record presence manually somehow. There it is. Now we can. Thank you.
Welcome to the Economic Development Committee meeting of Toowoomba Regional Council. This meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. I'd like to thank those of you in the room with us today and acknowledge everyone watching via Council's social media channels. And we'd like to open the meeting at 12:10. So I acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands we meet on today, the Western Waka Waka, Jibal and Jarawar peoples, and pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, rich traditions and bold ambitions of Australia's First People. Also note that Councillor James O'Shea is attending via Teams. We have no apologies and no leave of absence. And as we have nothing to discuss, I would like to conclude this meeting at 12:11. Thank you. So please, everyone, if you could click out of the meeting. We did have the ALGA presentation set for 1 p.m, but I just note a request from Councillor Melissa to potentially swap those.
We might just go
around.
offline. We've finished the meeting.
Okay, sorry.